Welcome to episode 24 of the Liberty Mastermind podcast. I'm Ox, along with my good buddies Jack and Pat. And today we're going to be interviewing Nicole Sauce from Living Free in Tennessee. What's going on, guys?
Hey, Ox.
What up, what up?
What's up, man?
Oh, man. Just looking at Pat's microphone, it kind of looks like... Did you guys ever see Flight of the Navigator way back in the day?
Yeah. I don't even know what that is.
Way back in the day. It looks like that alien from Flight of the Navigator. I guess the audience can't really see that, but anyway.
You got a blue? Is that what you got?
Yeah, I got the blue snowball.
The blue snowball?
Sounds hot, right? Don't Google snowballing. It's not what you think.
Right. I was just about to say
what? That. Hold on. I gotta look this up.
No, you don't gotta look that up.
Snowballing.
So, quick update from you guys. Jack, how's the store?
The store is good. Starting to find my groove. I really need to start videoing stuff, man. Like things come up, and I'm like, I should have videoed that. And every morning, I think, okay, I'll start videoing today, and then I get there and I get started with my day and just get so wrapped up in everything going on.
Jack, you know where a good place is to do that? And I've been meaning to do the same thing, is adding a lot more content. Even if we don't add it to the article or to a show, you and I are pretty active on Instagram, sending stuff back and forth. Like this hot bitch I just pulled up. Jesus. No, yeah, just open Instagram and there's this hot chick with sleeve tattoos and a tiny little shirt and some banging six-pack abs showing, and a AK rifle, which, it's cool, whatever.
Okay. So I should get a banging hot bitch with six-pack abs and an AK?
I'll take care of that part. I'll start the search.
Pat is Pat's trancing out on us. All right, back to us, Pat.
Sorry, let's focus.
I should have listened to you guys. Audience, do not look up snowballing. Do not, I repeat, do not look up snowballing. Whatever you do.
Still America. You look up whatever you want, people.
Do not look up rusty trombone. Do not look up turtlenecking.
Well, we try and warn the audience every time. We drink often, and there is adult language and adult content.
I'm not
No
drinking.
surprises here.
All right, maybe let's talk about Nicole Sauce. How about let's go over her bio?
Yes.
What do you think?
Let's do it. Let's do her bio and let's get her on the show.
All right. So Nicole Sauce, her professional career includes political activism in the free market arena, executive coaching, business management process, technology innovation and execution, business startup counseling, public policy design and representation, project management, and event management. Jesus. She is passionate about raising awareness and appreciation for the ideals of liberty, freedom, and self-reliance. Earlier work in the freedom movement includes SPN, the Beacon Center of Tennessee, and Cascade Policy Institute. She founded Spark Freedom to shock liberty policy talent into communicating through story first, then following with facts for the win. Her podcast, Living Free in Tennessee, aims to equip people with the tools they need to take control of their budgets, design their lifestyle, and establish stability through our changing economy. She also runs a craft copy roasting business called hollerroast.com. Let's welcome her to the show.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Okay, we're recording.
You just woke up. It's like 2 p.m.
Yes, late night with a female companion friend of mine.
Female companion friend. It's been a long time since I've stayed up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I can't do that anymore.
You can when you meet a new female or male companion friend.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. kind of push through the fatigue the next day.
It's basically what happens.
All right. Well, Nicole Sauce, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
For those in our audience that don't know, we did a short bio for you. We're going to throw that in post-production. Can you tell our audience about yourself?
Well, I was born at a very young age, and I have worked in the liberty policy world for about 14 years and recently transitioned out in a personal quest for self-reliance and do a lot of homesteading activities. Love really good coffee, so I roast coffee and am just excited with the energy in these podcast networks and homesteading networks that we have all over the country.
That's a perfect kind of note to start, what's pretty much a conversation, because we all kind of run in similar circles and listen to similar concepts. So I'm stoked. Speaking of podcasts, in your most recent podcast, which for the audience is Living Free in Tennessee, you wanted to go back to your core mission. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but the core mission is build independence in life, for people to build more independence into their life. And we call our show the Liberty Mastermind Podcast, where we talk about things that beef up our liberty. A synonym could be independence. So how did you get into talking about homesteading? Like, why start a podcast?
Well, it was partially started out of frustration, just personal frustration, as I was interacting with people in the community. And typical story would be, I need 2 crowns. It's going to cost $1,500, and I can't do that until I get dental insurance. And I would just look at them and think, if it's just $1,500, like, pay the $1,500. Why do you need insurance for that? And there seems to be a lot of I can't mindsets. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do an I can podcast. And it's my personal belief that the more people you encourage to start taking care of themselves, their families, their communities, the less we have to have the policy battles that I've been involved with for many years, where it's, how do we help those people by doing a government service? How do we control that to make it absolutely fair? And you stop caring about that when you can take care of yourself.
I recently started doing, let's see. I got back from Cuba and I met you, Nicole Sauce, at Jack's Pickles workshop. And listening to Jack for, I don't know, probably since the days when he was in the Jetta, I've started doing little bitty things for myself that I didn't used to do for myself. I started learning, and because of my travel and my military time, it was kind of hard. I couldn't grow a garden. I was always overseas. But when I got back, that was kind of meeting you on that event was kind of my big kickoff. And I've been doing a lot of things very recently. I've been learning and doing, and I got that can-do attitude now where I'm like, I could look up on YouTube how to do this. And I love that. Mm-hmm. And I feel it's life-changing. I love it. I love the can-do stuff.
Well, and the funny thing about that is, my mom was part of Back to the Land 2 movement. We're like Back to the Land 3, right? When she was doing it, she had to go to the library and crawl through all these books and figure out how to do stuff, and then try it and fail and try it, and finally it would be fine and she'd get it. And so, I'd been exposed to some of these skills that people consider weird, like canning your own food, which just makes sense if you have too much food. But when I started really getting into it, YouTube wasn't as big then, because I've been homesteading for about 10 years. It wasn't as big 10 years ago as it is now. But you still could Google just about anything and figure it out. The only thing I really couldn't figure out was how to make my stupid chicken water automated so it refilled itself. And someday I might crack that nut. I have hope now, because I met somebody at Jack's workshop named David who I think I can get him on the phone long enough to get me through the nuts and bolts of that. I also still can't frame walls. Like, I keep asking people to come show me how to frame walls, and they come out and they frame walls. And I'm like, no, you need to show me how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have made I have made like 4 chicken tractors that have fallen to pieces because my framing abilities are not very good.
And you kind of, what I like about your show, your podcast, is you kind of let people into the evolution of what you're doing on your homestead. And I don't know if you would call it a tagline or what, but at the very beginning of each episode, it's a woman's take on walk towards independence. One of my favorite things that I look forward to is your recipes.
Oh,
I'm drooling by the end of that. I'm like, oh man, I need to make, these roasted potatoes or whatever you're talking about. Can you give us maybe one of your favorite recipes, or, could be a breakfast, lunch, dinner, a snack even? What's a good recipe?
Why don't I tell you what we're doing today?
Okay.
So I helped with a pig processing workshop yesterday. Came home with half a pig, basically, I have to cut up today. So we're going to video some of that, but we're also going to get a roast out of it. And I have this terracotta casserole dish called a Römertopf, which is a Roman pot, I guess is the translation. You can get them on Amazon. And what it does, it's terracotta. You soak it in water and then you put things in it and you bake it at a very low temperature for a long time. So yeah. So what I'm going to do is like take the roast and I'll let it get up to room temperature because I have to have the pig cold to get the pieces cut efficiently. I'll salt the outside. I'll rosemary the outside, and then I'll put some like fresh ground black pepper on that and just let it sit. And then when it's ready, put it in the Römertopf and add cut up carrots, cut up cauliflower. I like to add a little bit of turmeric and about a cup of white wine. And then, of course, sweet potatoes, seal it up and just slow cook that. It'll turn into like a pot roast that you've never, unlike any pot roast you've ever had. It's very, very tender. The flavors all meld together. If I have cauliflower, which I can't remember if I do right now, I might throw some cauliflower in there because you almost get an Indianish flavor when you add the turmeric. But that's what we're doing today for dinner. You want to come over?
Oh, we'll have to. I don't think Tennessee is very far from where I am. You might have me here knock on the door. Hey, let me in. If you're not drooling from listening to that description, maybe we don't want you on the podcast. Anyway.
Yeah, I think having independence in your life and having good food that you can make yourself are two things that go together, because it really helps with your eating out budget when you go to the restaurant and you're like, we'll just do this at home next time because we can do it better than they do.
That's a fantastic point that, whatever term you want to use, some people use prepping. I don't like the connotation of that word, homesteading, whatever. It doesn't have to be beans and rice. You don't have to live on beans and rice. You can make amazing dishes.
You could do booze at home too. Ask me how I know.
Sound good. I make fuel myself.
Oh yeah, fuel, and it just kind of spills maybe accidentally.
Sometimes.
The original show name we were kicking around was the Liberty Bowl, because one time one of the first episodes, Pat.
Well, yeah, we do mastermind phone calls. So about once a week, the three of us will call each other and we'll say, hey, how can we help each other? What's our mission? What do we got going on? We said, this is such a good talk. We should share this with people. And while we talk, I drink.
Adult beverages. Adult beverages is what he's talking about. And one time he didn't have a cup. And so he put what were you drinking, wine?
Yeah, I just had a big old bowl of red wine on accident. We were talking on the phone and I was loving it. And I was like, things are going so great on this phone call. And I reached up and I grabbed something and set it down and poured my bottle of wine into it. And I went, something's not right here. This cup looks weird.
That is a professional level of an adult beverage drinker.
Wow, I've never done like the drunk podcast yet. I have to try that one. I've had people drinking on my podcast, but never been drinking myself.
Keep us posted. I want to hear what that, how that goes. You're talking about your chickens, or maybe you don't get like that.
Chickens.
I get like that. I don't know. Maybe you can handle it much better than I can.
No, I don't like slurring my words on tape. That might be the problem.
Okay.
I'm old, so I use the word tape, by the way.
Yeah. I grew up with a tape. How do you, one of the things, okay, going back to the independence, liberty, one of the ways I think that looks is minimizing our financial liabilities, the food cost, the grocery bill. So how do you save money by growing and storing some of your own food? What I'm thinking of is your episode or the segment, What Mother Nature Provides for Us. That's kind of what I'm thinking of. Yeah. So how do you save money by growing and storing your own food?
Well, the growing and storing piece really gives you a chance to save money on food. And you don't even realize you are until in the middle of summer, you go to the grocery store and spend like $5 on milk and cheese or whatever. We are not making, I have made cheese. I haven't had that room in my life or made that room in my life in the last couple years. But the growing of the food, if you do it smartly, like you don't go out and buy lots of additives for your soil and, spend $400 on plants that you never put in the ground. But if you learn how to plant a seed and cultivate the seed, there's time in that. And that's peace time for me. That's time in my head. I'm out in the garden. Nobody's bothering me. I listen to podcasts sometimes to entertain myself. And you spend $2 on a packet of tomato seeds and get a couple bushels of tomatoes, which would cost you, $40-50 at the farmer's market at the peak of tomato production. That saves you that money and it gives you peace of mind. So that's one way we do that is by growing what we can. But we also, I just told you a price for tomatoes, right? Mm-hmm. That's way cheaper than they're going to be right now in the store. Because tomatoes are not growing here anymore. They're shipping them in from South America, probably, and or California. And then the price for them, if you go right now, you probably, those ones on the vine are going to be like $4 that's $1 a tomato.
Yeah.
That's way too much money. Yeah, and then I live in this beautiful state where if I were going to be at this point anywhere where I had to live off the land, I'd be right here because you go for a walk in the woods and everywhere I look is something edible. And right now, finally, the oyster mushrooms are coming on. I'm going to be processing those later today. But
oh, hell yeah.
You get tons of mushrooms. You've got all these plants that just grow that you can eat all summer long. I went up on a walk 3 days ago and found stinging nettle, which is a really good, it sounds scary to eat if you've ever been stung by one, but it makes a fantastic soup, fantastic greens in a stir fry. Like we're just surrounded by all this free food that everybody's forgotten how to eat. And so a part of what I like to do or would like to talk about are easy ways that you can tap into what Mother Nature is providing, be it from your garden or the watercress growing down the road or whatever it is. And then you just have to figure out how to cook it. And that's part of the fun of, I think, living out in the country is learning how to cook all those different things that you may not have grown up with.
Oh, I love it. I'm kind of jealous. I'm right smack in the middle of Louisville, so I don't quite get that variety when I walk around. I do encourage friends to, I call it walk the street, kind of get out and explore the neighborhood because not to the degree you see it, but you might be walking a neighborhood and look over and you notice, okay, there's like a couple trees that just drop apples. Yeah. And nobody picks them up. Or I've seen tomato plants. I've seen other plants. I've seen plants that you could kind of harvest them and feed them if you have little critters like guinea pigs or chickens, quail, stuff like that. So, again, not to the degree you do, but I encourage people to get out and kind of walk through the neighborhoods and maybe you'll see something edible.
Well, here's a fun one I'm playing with right now that I see in cities all the time. It's called mullein, Mullein, I think is how it's spelled.
Okay.
And it likes to grow in recently disturbed soil that's kind of crappy. So, rocky, clayey, and what else is like that, right? Your city lot.
Yeah.
That got ignored and then somebody did something to it. And it's a really good medicinal that I haven't ever really played with until this year. I was getting a cold on Friday and Thursday I went on a walk, looked at the mullein and said, I'm going to pick some of that and figure out how to use it. And it turns out one of the things it's good for is fixing upper respiratory stuff. And as you can hear, I still have my voice. I didn't get sick and I just made tea with it. And I don't know if that's what did it or not, or if I just have an awesome immune system this year. I don't know, but it can't hurt, right?
Right. I'm going to have to look that up. I don't think I've even heard that name before.
Yeah, I just pulled up a picture. I'll throw one on the website.
Do you all remember? Go ahead.
It grows all over the place, and especially in the places where you don't think you're going to have edibles. It's something that grows there. That and wild mustard greens. I see them in the city all the time.
I'm going to write that down. Wild. Because I don't know. You've got different camps. Some people are for it and some people are against it. But I like to do the little seed bombs when you're kind of walking through areas and you're like, you have the seeds of various plants kind of in a little ball held together by clay or dirt or some combination. You just kind of drop them in various spots, like an abandoned lot or whatnot.
Yeah.
So wild mustard seed. Very cool. Do you all remember way back in the day, and like December 31st, 1999, you remember the whole like Y2K nonsense and the computers were going to freak out and it was going to be the end of the world? You all remember that?
Of course I do, because I'm old.
No, you're not. At that time, if it was, the computers flipped out and it was the end of the world, I would have been in trouble because I think I had like a half gallon in the fridge. Now, one of the interesting segments that you talk about, I think you call it prepper pantry, but you talk about eat what you store and store what you eat. Can you kind of tell us, if there is a problem, like a local disaster or someone loses a job or someone gets ill, you're going to be okay because you've got more than a half gallon in your fridge. You've got things in your pantry. So could you tell us about eat what you store and store what you eat?
Well, that phraseology I took from Jack Spirko's show because that's one of his tenets of modern day prepping. Mm-hmm. And he approaches prepping from the standpoint of just be smart and make your life better now in a way that prepares you for possible problems. I'll tell you a personal story. I had to change jobs. Well, I had to stop working one job in the way I was working it in January for health reasons. And I had known I was going to need to transition, but that plummeted. I made 1/5 this year of what I earned last year. So it plummeted my income way down. And part of why it was not as painful as, because that sounds scary, right? Part of why that wasn't as painful is I have this pantry. And the reason I have the pantry is when we have too many tomatoes, I can them. When we find too many mushrooms, I dry some. When I have the opportunity, like my friend bought a cow and had it processed. And when she said, do you want to get like half this cow at a fairly low rate for grass-fed organic beef, I bought some of this cow. Or when a deer is shot, the deer goes in the freezer, right? So I make too much stew. I can the stew. Like all of this is just a habit that I've built into my life over time. And it all started with canning pickles, which is the first thing. If anybody wants to start canning, make dill pickles. I don't care if cucumbers are out of season. Like go to the grocery store, buy those, and just learn how to do it because it's the least risky thing and it's the easiest to do. So I've been doing that for a long time. We've been in the country. The nearest grocery store is 25, 30-minute drive away. It's a pain in the butt. I had it down at one point where I could drive to the store once a month and buy everything that we needed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm not quite that good now. But
wow.
Yeah. And it's just a matter of what do we like to eat? Okay, let's have that on hand. Let's have a little more of that on hand so we don't have to go to the store. And then when things are in season, you end up with, 4 cases of tomato sauce because tomatoes came on. Or you end up with, I had one year where I had 4 bushels of butternut squash for the winter and put that in there. So the prepper pantry used to be a garage. And it was full of a generator that didn't work, that was an industrial-sized generator, a boiler system, some other things that the guy who built my house had in there, none of which there was a hot water heater, the wood-burning hot water heater. It was just full of all this stuff, and we cleared it all out and put shelves in, and it functions like a root cellar. So now I can store potatoes all winter long without it usually being a problem. And so when we cook dinner, it's not like, hey, let's have lasagna and go to the store and buy all the stuff. It's what do we have? And how can we make that tasty? That's how the Romer Top happened today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means when my income went down, I've been buying 2 of things for years. I haven't bought toilet paper yet this year. I haven't had that expense because I've had so much stored, and we have plenty still. Apparently, we were ready for Armageddon with toilet paper. Maybe to the extreme, but we'll get through it by the end of the year. But and we didn't really have to buy food at high market prices when it was when we maybe want tomatoes at the wrong time of year or lettuce at the wrong time of year, because we just had it here. It didn't matter.
Mm-hmm. And the process is you keep say over a month, you keep tabs on what you're buying at the grocery store. Say you buy, 5 jars of tomato sauce, and the next month you just kind of double what you buy. So you might buy 10. So you sort of build up this reserve of the stuff that you normally eat. So that's the general concept, right?
Yeah, so that's called doubling. So if somebody doesn't have stores like I do right now and they want to start, that the first month, what you do is every time you eat, you get a journal, you leave it in your kitchen. Every time somebody eats something, you write it down.
Mm-hmm.
Because just because it's in your cabinet doesn't mean you eat it. Like everybody has that can of sauerkraut that's been sitting there for 5 years or something, right? I don't know. Or, mine's like evaporated milk. Why do I need that? So you write down what you eat, and this does 2 things. One, you'll find yourself eating better because you realize how much crap you eat, and how much alcohol you drink. And then the other thing you'll realize is, okay, so there's a tendency here to go through X boxes of macaroni and cheese if that's your thing, and just don't judge yourself on that. Just write it down. You write macaroni and cheese on the first day you do it. And if later that week you have another one, you just put another little hashtag next to it so you don't have to write everything over and over. And then you look at it after 1 month and you'll find out that, you use 4 jars of tomato sauce and 5 boxes of spaghetti noodles and, 6 bricks of cheese, or, you'll just have this list, and there'll be some random things you only use 1 or 2 of. And then next month when you go to the store, you just choose one. You say, okay, so this stores for a long time. Mac and cheese is a good example of that. Stores for a long time. So we usually go through 6 boxes a month, and it's on my grocery list to get 3 boxes. I'm going to buy 6 boxes. And then the next week when I have to get another 3 boxes, I'm going to buy 6 boxes. And now I have twice the amount of mac and cheese for a month from what I usually would. So then you stop double buying that and you go, okay, we go through 4 jars of spaghetti sauce. That's 1 a week. So this week I'll buy 2. And then for a month, you buy 2. And that process of doubling, before you know it, what you have is a situation where you can load from the back of the shelf and pull from the front.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you use one, you replace it. And you just keep doubling things until you have all of the things that'll store well. Like you're not going to double gallons of milk and have milk stored for, because it goes bad.
Right. Although, when I lived in Mexico City, they have, it seems like all their milk is in this sort of brick-shaped container, and it's sold, not refrigerated, which is kind of interesting. And if you look hard around, you might be able to find that stuff, because I got to have my milk with my coffee. Let me just, I got to have, the liquidy stuff. I can't put the powder stuff in. You mentioned possible problems. And one thing I think it's maybe important to note is, when we're talking about prepping a pantry or double buying and stuff like that, concepts like that, it's not because we're preparing for the zombies to march or the Russians to invade or North Korea to invade or something like that. It's the stuff that's more common, that might be more likely, like we saw in Texas earlier this year, and I think you were involved in some of that relief effort, but like hurricanes, natural disasters, maybe a frost comes and knocks out the power for a few days or a week or something like that. Those are the more realistic scenarios that, we're kind of preparing for, to make sure we have backup food and water and stuff like that. So we're not prepping for the zombies.
No.
Yeah.
And the other thing is military action in our country. If that happens, I admire people who think they're able to prepare for that. But if a bunch of tanks come to your house, I don't care how many AK whatevers you have. They've got tanks, right? So, there's some extent, and I don't want to discourage people from being, prepared to defend themselves. I learned recently how easy it is to get in through my front door lock and started taking pistol training courses. But somebody on this conversation might have shown me that. I don't know who it was, though.
You mean doing spy stuff or hood rat stuff or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. But yeah, so it's preparing for what we're preparing for here is a tornado, which would knock down the grid and possibly the house. We're preparing for ice storms because if there's an ice storm, we basically aren't going anywhere for days because we're in the South, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're preparing for a job loss, which basically happened. The equivalent of that happened to me this year, and we made it.
Brilliant. One of, maybe the job loss, the financial thing, that's a good point to go into what I heard you discuss one time and go into. I'm talking about the Liberty Fund. You talked about it one time in an earlier episode, I think it was, and I heard that concept and it was like, boom, like my mind was blown. Could you tell us about it? And it's like a subtle shift in the way you think about finances and bartering maybe. But tell us about the Liberty Fund. That was big for me.
Okay. So the Liberty Fund is an idea I started kicking around. It was in the middle of winter. My pump house, which, by the way, if you're going to move to the country, learn basic electrical wiring and plumbing because you're going to have to fix your pump house yourself because it's really hard to get somebody to do that. So my pump house, a breaker had fried. And so there was no power to the pump house. No power to the pump house means no water to the house. And I had never replaced a breaker. And I was kind of scared of the power part of that. I'd done other wiring, but I hadn't done that. I'd seen it done. And finally, I just put on my big girl panties and went to the store with the fried breaker and showed it to the guy. And I said, I need one just like this. Talked to him a bit about putting it in without becoming barbecued. And then came home and, I did it. And I had Mark standing there with like a 2x4 to whack me if I touched the wrong thing. And I was like, I was way overkill, by the way. Because I'll just tell you for perspective, there's a main that was off from up in another building to the pump house. So there's basically no way I could have fried myself, but I was still worried or that I'd do it wrong and there'd be a horrible short and I'd start a fire. Like I was extra prepared for this one. So we got it done and it took, an afternoon on a Saturday. But at the end of the day, I realized that probably would have cost me $180 or so, 150, $180 to get some guy to drive all the way to my house, go all the way back to the store to get the breaker, come back out, put it in, and then it's wiring. So they just charge you more for that. And so we started, I said to Mark, hey, we just, we spent $20 on this. We just saved like $150. And that's money that I didn't have to pay taxes on to earn. So my income went down this year and I did a lot more stuff myself that I would have paid for. But think about it, to pay somebody $180 or so, or $170 with the math I just talked to you about, you have to earn 30 or 40% more than that because the taxes come out before you even get your money. And so when you're doing it yourself, not only are you not spending the money, but you don't have to earn extra, like that extra money to pay it. Does that mean you should do every tiny little thing? Probably not. But Mark and I just started talking about everything in terms of the Liberty Fund. Mm-hmm. And on my podcast, I say Independence Fund because I'm trying to make it approachable to people who may not know they're libertarians yet. But it's that same idea that you're freeing yourself from having to participate in the economy the way that we end up enslaved, and you're able to just throw money in that Liberty Fund. It's like the money you never had to earn, but you still had value. You're creating value for yourself, and that's how bartering works too, right? When I can trade coffee for something I really need, like my subfloor of the roasting camper was put in for coffee.
Mm-hmm.
It was a three-way trade. I traded coffee for a knife and the knife for the subfloor, and yeah.
That's that's kind of the way I wrap my head around it. Is say I want a half pound of the hollow roast coffee, right? And I trade a couple dozen chicken eggs for that.
Yeah.
I didn't have to pay $10 for the half pound of coffee, but then I didn't have to earn, say, $13 or $14. Wrapping my head around that new way of thinking was, I don't know, for me that was powerful way of looking at things. Love it.
Yeah, you have to be careful with that to do it for things you'll really use.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, sometimes I will barter because somebody's nice. In fact, I just figured out what that strange jar I had a strange jar in my kitchen today, and I was like, what is that? Now I remember what that is. That was something I didn't really want necessarily, but the person worked hard to make it, and so I traded them some coffee for it. But usually, I mean, like, I do that very rarely. Usually it's, I need a house sitter, I'll trade you coffee. Or I've traded coffee for venison. I've traded coffee for all sorts of things that we'll really use.
Quick aside, I'm asking this more for selfish reasons, but how do you determine, when you're bartering, you sell your coffee at a certain price point per pound. How do you incorporate that value into bartering? Does that make sense? Like when you're trying to, if someone's like, hey, I've got some grass-fed beef here, I'd like some of your coffee. Like, do you have a formula for how you do a barter swap?
Well, basically, it's just, a pound of coffee is $16 to $18, and that's $16 to $18 worth of beef, and we trade.
Okay. So based on your retail. Okay.
Yeah. Very
cool.
Yeah, and I have to be careful not to do too much of that because I have actual money in that coffee, right? I have the cost of goods sold. Right. So again, that also puts a limit on what I can barter because I have to eventually buy beans again. In fact, tomorrow I'm picking up like 800 pounds of beans.
Oh, holy cow.
Wow. Yeah, I know.
I appreciate you saying that. I call them Holloway Homestead chicken eggs, and I've got maybe a couple dollars in costs into each dozen eggs, and I'm thinking, well, how do I go about thinking about bartering?
So selling those for like $6 a dozen or something. That's your price.
Mm-hmm. Love it. So speaking of money, maybe that's a good point to jump into the other kind of area we wanted to cover. We talked about homesteading. You cover a lot of those topics in your podcast, Living Free in Tennessee. But let's talk about the other area we hear you discuss often, and both on your podcast and on the TSP podcast, businesses and side hustles. I think if you look up side hustler, there's Nicole Sauce. So
I'm clothed, for the record.
For the record. So
you said hustler. Sorry, that's just another old person reference.
It's still maybe for some of the older people in the audience, it's got a different connotation. But when I say hustle, I mean, I'm thinking of like hustle on the football field, like move quickly, like get stuff done. So what's the side hustle arc look like over the years to where you are now? Like, what has the arc been to where you are now?
I think I've always had side hustles in my life, but they've been a very low percentage. And as I said earlier, I knew I was going to have to transition out of physically what I was doing at my former job. And as I realized that, I started actually working even harder and, pushing up income from rentals, pushing up like the coffee, for example, starting the podcast with the idea that it will monetize at some point, starting a newspaper, those sorts of things, looking for ways to bring in revenue from multiple areas so that if one thing crashed, I wasn't totally screwed. And so the side hustle to me, it's something that it's not a second job. I had this debate with somebody who said, well, that's just a second job. And okay, yes, they're right. But it has the caveat that it's something that you own. It's something you're building.
Right.
that you are not becoming a second wage slave. And nothing wrong with having a good, stable job, right? You can do a lot with that. But for me, the requirements on me were becoming so onerous that I was developing a heart condition that is totally gone now. And when I'm roasting coffee and I'm my own boss, and my decisions happen quickly and I can manage it, and I don't end up in these horrible situations that I don't want to be in, I'm healthier, and that's bringing money in. And so side hustles are just a way to tap into maybe the sharing economy. Maybe you're going to drive Uber to generate, because technically you're working for them, but you control it. I Airbnb my guest cabin when we don't have guests in it, right? Bring a little money in off that. I have a pop-up camper that I rent out, and I go set it up at campsites nearby. And in the summer, I'm getting $400 or $500 a month off that thing.
What?
When I'm not camping in it, yeah. So you just start looking around. You're going to see, A, I like doing something, and B, it's worth money, and C, this is how you make money with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing you have to avoid is like all the side hustles at one time is not possible. I will do all the side hustles. No, don't do that.
Well, I think you said you've got like a whiteboard up in your kitchen, different side hustles, and you kind of keep track of the revenue for each, and focus in on the ones that are naturally kind of expanding or growing or bringing in more revenue. Right. So maybe the way I'm wrapping my head around is kind of like you throw a bunch of fun stuff up and see what sticks, see what grows, see what kind of develops. Has that kind of been your process?
Yeah. Well, when I realized that financial stability was really important for me, I figured out how to get my expenses down as much as possible. But then I also looked at the income side, because, more income really helps. And I've always had rentals, and sometimes they made me money and sometimes they cost me money. And so the first thing I did was make those never cost me money. And then I just write everything down. If I'm selling eggs, there's just a number. I have a whiteboard in the kitchen, and there are different things that are on it, but one of them is income for the month. And coffee is one. Living free in Tennessee is another one. The rentals are one. I build websites, so web revenue is one. I'm a facilitator. If somebody pays me to facilitate an event, that's an area that I do it. So I just keep those going. And my uncle came into town. He's a lawyer, and he was like, "Are you willing to share the real numbers with people so they can see?" And I said, "Sure." The numbers looked very different a year ago, but yeah, like sometimes the numbers for a month on that board look like crap. And sometimes I like between now and Christmas, I'll probably earn twice what I've been earning in any month this year, because I am roasting like a maniac. If I wasn't talking to you right now, the roaster would be on, but it would make too much background noise. Like it's great. People are ordering Christmas coffee. I fully expect January to be a really hard month on the coffee business, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we'll see.
Everybody's.
They all got their gifts. Now what?
Okay. And their gift cards and their Amazon.
Yeah, and they run out of their money because they spent too much on Christmas presents, which nobody should do. Don't go into debt for Christmas presents.
Make something, barter something.
Yeah.
Quick aside, I really think that side hustler spirit, that adaptive spirit, is going to be really important as we move along with, all the changes that, we hear about, the automation, the artificial intelligence. I think of my job, I work in psychiatry, and I could see how that could be more automated. Like fill in these screener forms, and, based on what you fill in, you should take this XYZ antidepressant. In other words, I think a lot of industries and white collar, blue collar, they can and will be and are being affected by automation, artificial intelligence. So, just something to keep in mind. Tell us about the coffee stuff, because number one, I love coffee.
Oh, that's
good. Number two, that's
You're not that far
that's
from
a
me.
big error. Yeah, I know Tennessee, Kentucky, not too far apart.
Nope. Okay, so this is how I met Pat, right? I went to this event. There's this guy sitting there, picking locks.
Some weirdo.
Weirdo. Yeah, I liked him a lot. I like weirdos. And we got to talking, and I was there to show people how you can roast your own coffee with just a cast iron skillet and a spatula. Just, if you want to start roasting coffee, that's how you get started. And you just better do it outside, or else all your fire alarms will go off. So did the presentation, and part of the presentation was, okay, and then how much side hustle income are you getting from this? And I had done a lot of research I was maxed out on roaster size before it became super expensive to get another roaster. So I'm standing there announcing to this room full of people who are all great people that I had reached my cap. This is what I'm doing. And this is how much money you can make unless you invest like $20,000 more into the business, which I was not going to do. And that's a choice you have to make. And two things happened. One, there was a guy in the audience who's worked in the coffee business for like many more years than I have, knows way more about it than I do, introduces to somebody who showed me a less expensive, better roaster. So for, $8,000 I could upgrade, which was more palatable to me at that time. And then Jack walks up to me and says, you need to increase the price of your coffee. And I just looked at him. It was like the second thing he'd said to me at the event. I'm looking at him, and in my head, I'm thinking, no, I don't have all my customer spaces filled yet. I'll do it after. And then I'm looking, I'm going, no, now's the time to do it because I don't have to tell everybody why the cost went up. So I went home, increased the price as he suggested, immediately started selling more coffee.
What?
Yeah. When your coffee's more expensive, people believe it's better. I don't know why. But so yeah, that totally worked. And then started looking at this other roaster and realized, you know what? I love coffee so much. I want to do this. I want to actually put some time in this, and I think I can make some money on it. So I launched a Kickstarter, pre-sold coffee, used that money to buy the roaster, got it all going, and I've been building this coffee roasting business ever since. I'd always been roasting coffee and selling it, but we've been, increasing our volume every month and we're going to add different varietals next year. So it's most of my business is mail order. Okay. And at that price point, I was happier roasting coffee than at the former price point because it suddenly became, an income that was worth doing.
Right.
So it's been a wild ride. I've learned a whole lot about, because I've always been involved in startup businesses. I've helped them for a living, done a lot of stuff like that. But this one has had a lot of unexpected turns. I thought I had it nailed. Nope.
And was it Brian that you're talking about?
Yeah, Brian Norton.
That helped out with he's a hoot.
I love him. Yeah. I like his, he has his like Bitcoin coffee or his crypto coffee.
Oh yeah, that's right. The coffee that's available only for crypto.
Only for crypto.
Right? Yeah, I saw that on Facebook.
Yeah, he put out somebody else is making CBD oil infused coffee. He put out a post yesterday about that. I was like, wow, that's a good idea.
I saw that.
I can't do that in Tennessee, but yeah, that's a good idea.
When are you gonna have your crypto coffee or whatever?
Well, you can buy it with crypto now.
Your coffee?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sweet.
Hollaroast.com, and you just pay with Bitcoin and other crypto because people don't understand the word crypto. So, but yeah, you can, and I figured out, I learned actually after, because Jack had a fall workshop and Vin Armani was there, and he told me, because I've been trying to do crypto, I had Bitcoin for a long time as a method, but it always goes Bitcoin into my bank account, right? This is like crypto to crypto. And it's a system called coin payments, and you can choose like, I'll take these 20. And then you can choose if it goes, Litecoin to Litecoin, or if you get Litecoin, if you want it to go into Ether or something else. So, and you just end up with all these wallets with different things in them when people buy with crypto. So
love it.
Yeah.
I wish we interviewed Vin a couple 3 months ago or so, and we were like, yeah, we'll see you at the fall workshop. And then everybody got, I started a new job, and Jack bought a business, and Pat was doing some training in another state, so we didn't get to go see everybody.
Not having Pat there was a problem.
Really?
I was really upset about that.
Yeah, we were sad without you.
We were super bummed, but hopefully in 2018, we've been wanting to but we haven't yet touched on cryptocurrency, and you just mentioned it. Maybe, do you want to go into that at all? Maybe share your thoughts on cryptocurrencies. I mean, as we record this, Bitcoin is, what is it? I mean, it was up to like 16, 17, and it was down to like 13, 14 per Bitcoin, and kind of hovering around there.
Yeah, Bitcoin's exploding. It's like going through a real turbulent time right now.
Mm-hmm. What do you, do you have any big overview of cryptocurrencies, or, encouragement or thoughts on that sort of thing? Because I think, like Vin says, it's tied in big time to liberty in the future, really understanding cryptocurrencies. So do you have any thoughts?
I completely agree with Vin on this. In fact, when Bitcoin came out, and I, by the way, am a gearhead. So when Bitcoin came out years ago, 2009, I guess, well, I mean, I don't remember when it came out, but in 2009, 2010, I tried to buy my first Bitcoin. And I failed because I couldn't figure it the hell out, right? And because it was confusing, and even though I was a coder, I still couldn't figure it out because I didn't dedicate time to it. And boy, I wish I would have now, because it was like $25 a coin or something ridiculously cheap.
Oh, wow.
So, then I got really busy and I started a nonprofit, and that took all my time. And a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, I looked at it again. Coinbase existed at that point. And Coinbase made it so that it's really easy to buy it, right? So I was just like, okay, a movie, $20 a month into Bitcoin. And now it's, I was buying it around $600, and now it's worth $15,000 a coin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've never owned a whole Bitcoin all to myself in my whole life, because I was only buying $20. But I have seen a dramatic, I just took part of one of my side hustle incomes this month is that I withdrew my original total investment in Bitcoin when it was at 16. And that is coming in as income. And now all the money I have left in Bitcoin is house money.
Okay.
So that's been, for me, back to the concept of independence, a really good way to accidentally build wealth without it costing me anything. But if you go bigger than that, and I completely agree with Vin on this, we don't need banks. We don't need the government to control currency if we're using crypto. It's actually more, if you look into how it works, it is more secure than anything we're doing in the financial sector now. So it's better. The problem is people need to adopt it. And the other problem is governments I think they're now starting to realize that they might need to feel threatened by this. And so I'm watching very carefully to see how it's going to be regulated. And they're trying to figure out how they're going to regulate it. But I think it's a really good way currently it's a really good way to anonymously trade and not be caught. But at the same time, I don't encourage people to go out and do a bunch of illegal stuff, because if they do catch you and decide you're the one to make the example of, it's going to be like, you have to know what risk you're getting into, right? But it's, as near as I can tell, impossible for any one entity to track every single thing that happens with cryptocurrency, because it's all computer managed. And you don't have to have your identity attached to the address of this virtual currency. And if you think about how currency works, both in our world and crypto, there is no real value to either currency, no tangible value, right? It's like when you're driving down the road, there's a yellow line down the middle. You know what that means? That means I stay on the right of that line, and the person going on the other direction stays on the right-hand side of that line. And the reason we don't have a head-on collision is we've agreed that that's what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Money is exactly like that. We've agreed $1 is worth $1.
Right.
And if you look how cryptocurrency works, it has math built into it, so it's predictable, so you can count on it in certain ways, right? It's got the whole blockchain behind there, but we still have just agreed that a Bitcoin is worth 15 grand, and therefore this much of a Bitcoin will buy you a pound of hollow roast coffee. It's all
right.
faith-based.
Right.
But I really see it as a way to opt out of the slave wage society, basically.
That was a great overview and a great introduction for future kind of, diving into cryptocurrencies. I feel like, if I want to trade Bitcoin Cash for some hollow roast coffee, we should be able to do that. We're both adults. I should be able to trade my currency for your coffee, and nobody else needs to be involved.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, we agree.
Right. Yeah. And nobody's being forced to do it. We're all volunteering to do that.
And if Bitcoin Cash crashes the very next day, that's my problem, not your problem.
Right.
You didn't know it was going to happen, and I'm the one who accepted the deal.
And you don't have to share. Well, anyway, that was a good overview of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, noted. Don't have to share. Got it.
I think getting philosophical for a second is probably a good segue into our next segment here, Nicole. I think you're going to like it.
Oh, boy.
So this is our Liberty questions that we ask every guest.
Oh, boy, this is going to be fun.
There's 5 of them, and it is not a test. And if you want to give soundbite answers, you can do that. Or if you want to go even more deep and philosophical, you could do that too. So here we go. Number 1. This is our impact question. So what is one of your top concerns that can or that does have an impact on your liberty or your lifestyle? And it could be a good concern and impact or a bad one, up to you.
Dude, that's like a really hard general question to start out with.
Yeah, you take it any way you want.
My top concern, like you're making me choose one?
No, you can choose 2. I mean, we're not really big on rules here.
I guess the 2 things I think the most about are how establishing methods to not earn money while value is still coming into my life, because I think participating in our economy as it is means I have to participate in the governmental system and the taxation system, the regulation system, all of those things. And so what I've been focusing on is how to have enough of the money I need to live the lifestyle I want, but have a lot more value from the efforts I put out without it having to be money, which is why cryptocurrency is something I'm super interested in.
Awesome.
Because that's how they control us. And it's offensive to me. Like my taxes for last year are not done yet because it's offensive for me to sit down and fill out the paperwork. It is my least favorite task in this whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put it off. And, the government owes me money right now. So all my libertarian friends are like yelling at me because I haven't done it. I'm like, but I have to go through all the fucking stupid rules that they have about what's a write-off and what's not a write-off.
Right.
The other really, really offensive thing is what I put in my body. And I know you think I'm going to go for drug war, but I'm not. Although that's really offensive too. It's the food. Like, do you know what I have to undergo inspection-wise for the coffee?
Oh, God.
No.
The government can come on your property at any time to look at your facility, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so do you know how dangerous roasted coffee is to your health?
Probably minimal, if any.
The least dangerous things I can do is roast coffee. I mean, the only thing I could see is like if I was leaving my beans around and mice were getting in there and pooping, like that would be gross. But I mean, there's like the only way I can really kill you with my coffee is if I put cyanide in it intentionally, and no inspector's going to find that if they come to a clean facility, right? So, and the raw milk debate, and then of course that flows over into the whole drug, like CBD oil. I brought it up. My mom shattered her elbow and had to have a prosthetic bone in, and she was in excruciating pain, and they're giving her pain meds, and she and I are at this event in Washington State where it's legal. And she's like trying to function, doesn't want to take a painkiller that makes her loopy, but her elbow hurts. And a friend of mine was going to a dispensary, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, can I get you something?" So I had him pick up a cream that has CBD oil in it, and he came back and gave it to me. He's like, "This is the first time I've ever dealt drugs, Nicole." And we laughed. But it immediately took the pain away better than her pain meds would. And we're fucking regulating CBD oil. Like, you can't get it in Tennessee. It's illegal. What? They don't care how much pain you're in. Fuck you. That's what they say to you.
The government doesn't care about us?
Not at all.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
CBD oil, that's some sort of active ingredient that doesn't have THC. Is that right? Or
yes, that is right.
Okay.
Yep, that's hold on, somebody's walking in.
Pizza.
Yep.
Okay, just curious. I'll have to look up that more.
Yeah, so CBD oil and I mean, frankly, if somebody wants to get high, I don't care about that either. So, all of that's offensive to me. And I think the fact that the American people didn't learn through prohibition the first time and have allowed themselves to be regulated in this way, not just for recreational use, but also the way the FDA oversees prescription drugs is offensive and a bad idea. And, if you talk to anybody about it and try to bring it up gently, they think they're being protected and taken care of. And that's even harder to watch.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much in that I feel like we can do 10 other whole hour-long shows on each one of those little topics.
Right.
Did I mention I worked in public policy for 14 years?
Oh, yeah. You know what, Nicole? Maybe we should do a talk on the drug war, because I've been wanting to rant on that for a long time.
Well, maybe I can get Mark in on that too, because he knows more about it than I do.
Perfect. Oh, okay. Next question, number 2. That was a short one, huh? Number 2, motivation. Ox likes this one. So when life is challenging, or we call those character building days, what do you do to bring mental relaxation or insight or clarity to yourself on your tough days?
A couple of things. You know about the Zello channel, the TSP Zello network.
That helped me quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah, so they've talked me through a lot of off the cliff moments. Back away from the cliff, Nicole. And that's just tapping into a community of people who I think our core values are similar in the liberty perspective, and they're all trying to build self-reliance and independence and liberty into their lives. So that's helpful. But I think if I were evaluated, I would be evaluated as ADD. Or ADHD, I don't know which one. I'm really good at focusing to the exclusion of all other things until I forget about the world, on one hand. And then other times I can't focus and I'm scattered and I spin in circles. And the way I've learned to control that is through music. So I'm a musician as well. So the process of reading and performing music makes my brain reset, which is really weird. But it works. And then listening to certain pieces of music will set me up differently. One tool I use a lot is a classical piece, and it's the 4th movement of Beethoven's 9th Symphony. That thing, if I'm having a hard time, if I'm feeling like right before a presentation, not confident, and I'm a pretty good presenter, but sometimes you just get into this I suck mentality, right? And I'm like, okay, time to go to listen to Beethoven's 9th. And it has, for me, because I speak German too, it's in German, and it taps into that language center. The music is really hypnotic and resets my brain, and then I can go.
Maybe we'll close out the show with that music if I can pull it up today.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, and that is the best poem ever if you speak German. It's really cool. The words, the translations don't do it justice, but it's a really good. Also the poem is good.
Number 3, okay. Mantras. A mentor once told Ox, you got 2 questions in here, man. What the hell? A mentor once told Ox, start every day happy. So is there something that you do either to start your day with positivity, or do you have any kind of favorite mantras or quotes that you say to yourself, occasionally?
I have a lot of them. That's hard. Do hard things is something I got from a mentor. Do hard things now so you don't have to do harder things later. Which is why I spent 3 full days sorting and filing papers before Thanksgiving. Because I hate filing too. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. It's not really a mantra, it's a perspective. I think in every situation that happens, every crisis situation, you can come away from it depressed and beaten, or you can find the good in it. And so I try to find the good in just about everything. And that means you have to pause. It's not a mantra, but it's just like find the good. Like I went through divorce once and I found the good in it. Well, I was like, well, at least we didn't have children yet, and people kind of accuse me of having rose-colored glasses in situations, but I'm like, well, if I spend the next 7 months bitching about something bad that happened that I can't change, what the fuck? That's not going to be good, right? And so I always try to find, either like I'm leaving it behind and moving on, or find something good about it and move on, because getting stuck in the negative, it just gets you stuck.
That's awesome. I call that reframing. I love it.
Yep.
This one's a little more direct. This one is take action. So for the audience, is there any action that you can recommend they take to immediately start improving their liberty or their lifestyle, or to unplug from the state? So take that however you want it. Run with it.
I think the action that you take is specific to where you are. So the first action you should take is assessment. Assess where your life is and where you want it to be, and then set your first step and do it. For me, my next action is, in fact, it's building the crypto side of the business. That's my action. Somebody who lives in the city, who goes to a wage slave job every day, their first action might be find one side hustle and push it. But, find your own, assess where you are, and then take a step. I don't care what it is, and take a new step every year at least. Always add a step.
Well, that's what we're doing here. We're on episode 24 and still moving.
Yay! You made it past so most podcasts don't get past episode 8, so you're going to be successful.
Oh, wow.
Hooray!
Yeah.
And Uncensored is on number 7 coming up next week, I think.
Cool.
The Uncensored podcast. All right. So take action. Anything. Just do it. Awesome. Recommended reading.
Nike. Thank you, Nike.
Thanks, Nike. So this isn't specifically reading, but any YouTube channels or videos or books to read or podcasts to check out, anything like that you can recommend, either within the specialty that you talked about today or just in general that you like.
Well, of course, they should start listening to Living Free in Tennessee.
That link will be in the show notes, of course.
Yeah. Recommended reading. Okay, so this is nerdy. If you've heard a lot of people talking about Ayn Rand, and you tried to read Atlas Shrugged and your eyes crossed and you threw it down the toilet, right? Go read Anthem. Anthem. It's a relatively short book. Most of the objectivists I know when I say this are cringing inside because there's so much more in her other stuff, but sometimes people aren't ready to take on the deeper philosophical questions. So it's a good story, and it's a good illustration of why full governmental control of everything is a bad idea. And I think the more people hear stories about stuff like that, the more we can change them away from always wanting the government to change, to control everything. Although I don't imagine your target audience has that problem.
Hope not. Or not for long anyways.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's something it's something you can give if you have a friend who likes reading fiction. It's something you can give a friend for Christmas, right? That may not be into liberty, and you don't deliver it with this will teach you to be in liberty. No, it seeds it. It's a good story. And it seeds it. The Bobbsey twins, another one. If you have kids, okay, so these are old books and they have like racial things in them that people today would find offensive, but I love the books. Good stories. Bobbsey twins, same thing. Bunch of kids running around solving their own problems. What? You mean you don't need a fairy godmother? Yeah. Okay. So
Bobbsey twins. I don't think I've heard that one.
I've heard of Anthem. I read Atlas Shrugged and I loved it. I've reread it a couple times. I looked into Anthem, and I guess no one really gave me as good of a description of it as you did just now.
Yeah.
So now I'm more excited to read Anthem, so that'll probably be one of my next books on my list. Yeah,
it's just a story, but it's a story. And I have to admit, I still haven't made it through Atlas Shrugged because every time she goes on and on and on, I'm like, okay. I think Friedrich Hayek was that way for me too. The Road to Serfdom, read that. And he has a lot of good things to say, a lot of arguments to make. but it's like, okay, I get it. You're saying it again. Okay, I get it. You're saying it again. Like, I'm not very patient. And to me, freedom ain't hard, right? It's a discipline, and that part is hard, but the concept of freedom is not hard. It's, if it ain't my business, I stay out of it, and I learn how to be responsible for my actions, and I take care of others when I can. Like, it's just, and that third thing, you don't have to if you don't want to. Like, it's not that's how I feel like without a strong community, freedom's difficult. So, yeah. But people tend to over philosophize freedom, and it doesn't need to be that way. It's a very basic concept.
I agree 100%. That's our last question. So, Nicole, the floor is yours for anything that you want to cover that you didn't, or anything you want to plug, or any cool stuff you got going on.
Like say events or anything that, or products, services, all the good stuff.
I have all sorts of products and services because I love side hustles, right? So, I mean, the podcast, I'd love to get more listeners there if you're interested, if you've liked what you've heard today. And if you like a good cup of coffee that's freshly roasted, hollerroast.com is where you can get my coffee. And you can pay with crypto, as a matter of fact. But the most exciting thing, April 27th and 28th, and there's a possibility that we're going to add a half day. That's what I call the Project Accelerator Day, where participants can present something for 5 minutes, no longer than 5 minutes, to the group that they're working on, and then get critical feedback, potentially offers for help, that sort of thing. But I'm doing a workshop here, and it's going to be part homesteading and part entrepreneurship. We're going to have some really awesome speakers who I can't say who they are right now. But it's in Tennessee at our homestead. There'll be on-site camping. There will also be Airbnbs and other lodging options in the area. But we're going to start doing this annually because I think supporting the network of people who want to be more self-reliant, more liberty-minded is really important. And people who are taking action doing that, we want to support each other. We want to learn more, and then we want to spread that knowledge. So that's my big plug. If you go to livingfreeintennessee.com, there will be information on it there as I start releasing it. I have a little more work to do on content before we launch registration.
And that's where you mentioned Pat kind of diddling with some locks and whatnot whenever you were presenting. That's where we all met, is one of these type of events. Yep. Where we all got together and kind of swapped skills and philosophies and had a lot of fun. So I fully expect this is going to be just a phenomenal event. Can you say where in Tennessee? So I can start planning out in my mind how to get there.
My homestead is in Lancaster, Tennessee, which you're going to have to totally Google to see it. I'm very close to a large lake called Center Hill Lake. So that's where it will be. There's a little debate about if we stay at the homestead the whole time or go over the Buffalo Valley to a schoolhouse for part of it, but it'll mostly be centered in Lancaster, Tennessee.
Awesome.
And, I have to say, like, the reason, so we met at a workshop like this, and everybody I met at that workshop was the caliber of person who, when you said, like, Brian Norton's a good example, hey, I want to do this coffee roasting thing. And he knows way more about it than I do. And he's also a roaster. He wasn't like, oh, shit, you're my competition. I'm going to be an asshole to you. And no, he's like, here's how I can help you. Mm-hmm. This is how you can get a leg up. Or, like every little success, they're like, great, keep doing more of that, right? Like, they're not going to lie to you when you're doing something stupid. But they're also not the kind of like most networks I've been in, backstabbing, very, like, instead of positively competitive, they're negatively competitive. Mm-hmm. That's not how these are, and that's not what we want to see at our workshop. So we want people who want to come and improve themselves, help other people improve, and spread liberty, spread independence.
It's going to be fun, I imagine. Thanks for sharing that.
There so might we be will alcohol there too.
Ooh, yeah.
Pat's like, sign me up. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for going over the homesteading, kind of arena and the businesses, transitional businesses, side hustles, and even touching on cryptocurrencies, which is a thread we've wanted to start. So, and it's been fun. It's been eye-opening. So thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me on. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, so there you go.
Boom.
Awesome. Ox, you want to close us out, man? I love when you do that.
I fumbled it last.
Just don't screw it up this time.
Don't fail me, mouth. Well, thank you very much for listening to episode 24 of the Liberty Mastermind podcast. And big special thank you to Nicole Sauce for joining us today. And again, going over homesteading topics and talking about her podcast, side hustling, cryptocurrencies, very exciting stuff that all ties into Liberty. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with a friend, friends, family. We are on Twitter. You can go to libertymastermindpodcast.com, Facebook. What else, Pat? What about your Instagram?
You can check me out on Instagram at uncensoredtactical.
Thanks for tuning in.
See you next time. Okay, so say again, we need to do some shows on what?
Well, we can go back and revisit combat application tourniquet. We also talked about cast iron, maybe some of our favorite recipes. Jack, I think you mentioned quail one time.
Mm-hmm.
I could do that. Fuel and water storage. Maybe we can throw back to the hurricanes and shit this year.
Mm-hmm.
Vehicle kits and bags. Like the shit we keep in our vehicles.
I'm doing a show with Texas Joe on Uncensored Tactical on vehicle carry. So that one will be from a tactical mindset, but I think from a preparedness mindset, LMP, we should do a show on that soon.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I join you on that with all of my medical stuff in the car?
Mm-hmm.
I also wrote down silver and gold. I don't know. If you guys follow X, put X percentage of your net worth into silver and gold. I do a little bit.
I don't yet.
Okay.
I need to.
We can go back to Jake Robinson kind of left it wide open for us to discuss the barter blanket. We could do a segment on barter blanket, mead.
I used a pretty effective barter system in the military. A lot of our gear that wasn't tracked. Surprisingly, in the military, you don't always get all the gear that you need. So we had networks across the country of people that would say, "Hey, my body armor's expired. Someone please help." So I'd say, "Hey, I have 2. Let me send you one." So I had no moral issue with that because if I had 2 and they weren't specifically tied to my name at my unit, they weren't like, "Here, sign out this piece of body armor." Well,
right.
Okay, well, you gave it to me to use for work. Someone else that worked for the same government doesn't have it. Let me send that over to him. So it wasn't like a eBay scam. We weren't selling shit, but I like that barter system a lot. And then you save that money. You're not paying the taxes on it. It's secondhand gear, but people are getting what they need. I liked it.
Maybe we can set up an LMP barter system like that.
Oh, that might be interesting.
That might be a paid service, like a membership.
Dein Heiligtum, deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Alle Menschen wir den Brüder, wo dein softer Flügel weilt. Eines Freundes Freud zu sein, wir ein holdes Leid errungen, mische seinen Jubel ein. Ja, wer auch nur eine Seele, seinend auf den Erden ruht, und trennend sich aus diesem Boot. Freude trinken alle Wesen an den Brüsten der Natur, alle Guten, alle Bösen folgen ihrer Rosenspur. Küsse gab sie uns und Reben, einen Freud geprüft im Tod. Wollust war dem Wurm gegeben, und der Cherub steht vor Gott. Umschlungen Millionen diesen Kurs der ganzen Welt, Brüder überm Sternensee, muss ein lieber Vater wohnen. Ihr stürzt nie